Albert's brother-in-law. This is Matthew McCabe. He was involved in this as a visitor to the party, as it were. Again, we're in Massachusetts for the Karen Reed trial, so let's get you back into court right now.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. McCabe, when we broke, I was just about to ask you about the last exchange here. You will agree with me that on February 1st of 2022 at 12:51 and 49 seconds, you texted the group chat to say, ask Chris to ask some questions, correct?
Yep, I'm reading it right now. Yes, that's correct.
And who was the Chris you were referring to?
That would be Chris Albert.
Brian's brother, correct?
That is correct.
And then you texted your wife, Brian Albert, and Nicole Albert, quote, tell them the guy never went in the house, correct?
Yeah, that's part of the same text. Yes.
Mr. McCabe, who was the guy that you were referring to? Does he have a name?
That would be John O'Keefe.
When you told the group to tell them the guy never went in the house, that was you talking about how you should all get your stories straight, correct?
No.
You would agree with me that your stories are all straight in terms of the guy never went in the house, correct?
Objection.
Can you answer that?
John never went in the house. It's not a story, it's a fact.
Well, when you said, tell them the guy never went in the house, Brian Albert was on that exchange still, was he not? He was still part of the group text?
Yes, Brian is on the exchange.
And Brian Albert was the one to respond, wasn't he?
Let me switch pages here. 12:51.
He responded, did he not?
Yes, he did.
And then at that point, you knew Brian Albert was the oldest brother of the Albert family, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
The oldest sibling in that family, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And in his response to your instructions that his younger brother, Chris, should say that John O'Keefe never went in the house, or the guy never went in the house, you would agree with me that he responded with one word, correct?
Yes, he did.
And in response to you saying the guy never went in the house, Brian Albert's response was, exactly, correct?
Yes, that's his response.
All right, we're done here.
All right. Commonwealth, any redirect?
Just briefly, Your Honor.
Now, Mr. McCabe, John O'Keefe never went in the house that night, is that correct?
That's correct.
And from this text communication, as far as Chris Albert was concerned, was Chris Albert ever at the house on that night?
No, he was not.
And this is something that you, obviously, this death of John O'Keefe occurring, how it did, where it did, and why it did, that was something that you discussed.
Can you keep your voice up?
Yes, I'm sorry. This tragic occurrence, as far as what happened to John O'Keefe, his death, where, why, how, that was something that you discussed within your family, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And why?
I didn't hear that
Why
one.
was it a discussion in your family?
You're talking about the immediately after? No one knew what happened. John never showed it, never came in the house, so we had no idea what happened to John.
And John was someone you were friends with, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, did you ever tell anybody what to say at any point in time to the state police, to any investigator whatsoever?
No.
Did anyone in your family or in your presence ever tell anyone that in front of you?
No.
Now, you asked some questions about when you were looking out and you saw the SUV, correct?
Yes.
And your focus, as you indicated in your testimony, was on the SUV, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, Now, during the time that you were looking out, did you ever see a pickup truck outside?
I knew the pickup truck was out there, but again, I didn't look at the pickup. I kind of saw it, but was focusing on the SUV.
And
I saw a vehicle out there, let's say that.
my question is more so, as far as the tire marks that you were talking about in the road, was that before or after the pickup truck was in?
It was after.
Now, you were asked some questions about directionality and things of that nature as far as coming down Chapman or Cedar Crest, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And so if someone had driven by the house, missed the house, and then went on to Cedar Crest, turned around, presumably then they would be taking a left or a right from Cedar Crest onto Fairview, is that right?
Yes, if they passed the house, they would have come to Cedar Crest and turned around and come back onto Fairview.
And you were asked some questions about whether or not you saw Mr. O'Keefe from your vantage point in the SUV, is that correct?
Yes, I was.
You didn't see him, correct?
I did not see him.
Could you see anyone inside from where you were?
I could not see anybody in the vehicle.
Do you see anything about the windows as far as their tint or anything like that?
I don't recall the tint. I couldn't see inside, though.
As far as any statements that Ms. Nagel made on the way home, is it your testimony that Ms. Nagel didn't say those statements or that you didn't hear those statements?
I did not hear those statements.
Now, turning to February 1st, do you recall what you were doing on that day when you drove by Fairview?
I don't recall what I was doing. I don't recall exactly what I did that day.
And were you going specifically by Fairview or where were you?
Based off of reading these text messages, I was doing something, picking up a car or something, it says. I don't recall where. And I cut down Fairview.
Now, as far as your statement in those text messages where you said, looks like more has been dug up, do you recall that?
I don't recall it. I read it in the text message.
Do you recall what that was in regard to? As far as what were they digging?
Oh, sorry. I do recall. They dug out the snow. It looked like the snow banks. It looked like there was more snow dug out around the scene.
And by the scene, you mean around where the flagpole fire hydrant that was?
Correct, yes.
And do you recall any sort of change in the weather between the 29th and February 1st?
I believe the temperature rose. Snow was starting to melt, if I recall.
Now, when you and your wife your wife is talking to Mr. O'Keefe and you were given directions, there was some reference to Bella's house, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And that was sort of used as a directionality as far as Mr. O'Keefe would be familiar with where Bella's house was?
Yes, that's correct.
What, if any, relationship in the past were you aware of between Mr. O'Keefe and Bella, and Bella's mother?
At some point, Bella's parents were separated, since divorced. At some point, Mr. O'Keefe had a relationship with Bella's mother.
And after that conversation in which that was referenced as far as Bella's house, did you ever hear from John O'Keefe again?
Never heard from him again.
Nothing further.
Anything?
Just very briefly.
Okay.
You were just asked if you ever told anyone, if you told anyone what to tell the state police or investigators, and your answer was no, correct?
Yeah, I don't recall telling anyone to tell anybody anything.
So with regard to your statement, tell them the guy never went in the house, who's the them?
Do you mind if I go back and read?
Take your time.
I think I know. I just want to read it. The them was Channel 4 went into D&E.
You done with your answer?
Yeah, you just asked me who them was.
And the answer is you were instructing people on the group chat to tell Channel 4 that the guy never went in the house, correct?
Yes, this was on February
February
1st. As I said, none of us in the house had any idea what happened to John O'Keefe. So we instructed I was saying, we don't know what happened. He never came in the house.
All right, so
That's what was my statement was.
sir, I didn't ask you for any of that just now, did I?
You just asked me
No,
why I said
I
that.
asked you who the them was. did I
Objection, Your
not?
Honor.
You didn't. You look like you asked me to elaborate.
Okay. So your answer to my question is, the them was you were saying that Channel 4 should be told that the guy never went in the house. Yes or no?
Channel 4 was who I was referencing. Yes.
No further question.
All right, you are all set, Mr. McCabe. I will take those documents.
Thank you very much. Walk out.
Yes.
Okay, here's Matthew McCabe. Whew. Got that over with. So we heard the finishing of the cross, then we heard redirect, which is intended to rehabilitate whatever the cross made some damage on, and then there was the cross. So Sherry Botwin is here still with me, Katherine Lizardo. Katherine.
See him, but the fact that this witness actually came back to the house and had two opportunities, that's very,
Yeah,
doubtful.
the whole scenario makes zero sense, which leads the defense's argument that this was all orchestrated, just not very well. Okay, let's take a break here. And I do want to get some insight from Sherry on the defendant herself. I think it's very interesting. She is a licensed clinical social worker, so we're going to check that out. We're going to be back in just a moment. New witness on the stand will be the wife of this witness we just heard from, Jennifer McCabe, coming up when we come back.